That last Nintendo Direct was one of the best we have ever had, in my opinion, with announcements like the first new Mario & Luigi game in almost 9 years, the first Zelda game where you actually play as Zelda, and, let's see here, Metroid Prime 4. So in light of all these insane reveals, I wouldn't blame you for forgetting a little announcement of a new sport coming to Nintendo Switch Sports. But now that the hype has settled down at least a bit, I want to talk about this and the somewhat major implications it may end up having. You see, Nintendo's now proven they're willing to update this game. What's to stop them from doing it again? It may seem like wishful thinking, but I believe there's at least a slight chance Nintendo can turn this game from its stance as the most disappointing in its series to something truly great. Do I think it'll happen? Absolutely not, but I've had some ideas for this game that I've been sitting on for a while, and this is the perfect excuse to talk about them, so let's get into it. Obviously, we first need to talk about sports. I mean, it's in the game's title, and this video was prompted by the announcement of a new one. It is a crime baseball and boxing haven't returned from the original Wii Sports yet, outside of Wii Sports Club, though in that game they were really just worse versions of the originals in all ways but graphics. Baseball is probably my most played sport in the whole series, and a new version of it would make me so happy. An additional mode for kickball could also be added to have something else that could utilize the Joy-Con leg strap. I'd also love to hear a new version of the song which they use for the baseball training modes, since although Switch Sports did a lot of things wrong, they 100% got the music right. As for boxing, having the sport at all in this game would be a really great inclusion, but I'd also really love for the training mode with Matt to come back. They'd probably replace him with a sports mate, which would be awful, but having some kind of separate tutorial area would do a lot for world building in my opinion. And what the heck, add more training modes for the rest of the sports as well, or at the very least some other kind of additional modes. Switch Sports is severely lacking in those compared to the previous entries in the series, and I think there's a lot they could do with them for new versions of all the sports. For one, they could bring back a lot of the modes from Resort, like Speed Slice and Showdown for Swordplay, or I guess it's called Chambara now, and the 100-pin challenge for bowling. They could even bring Frisbee Golf back as an additional mode for golf instead of just part of the Frisbee sport, where in my opinion it did not really fit in that well with Frisbee Dog. I've always thought it should have been an additional mode for golf. As for new modes, one that comes to mind is one where you try to get the highest volley in volleyball, with a similar concept to the Mario Odyssey volleyball minigame. But with that little side tangent out of the way, let's get back to the sports themselves, and from Wii Sports Resort, I would love to see wakeboarding return. It has somewhat simple gameplay, but I've always had a blast with it, and one new addition I'd love to see is an endless mode. In this mode, instead of choosing easy, intermediate, or hard, the longer you play without wiping out 3 times, the more obstacles appear to have the difficulty ramp up as time goes on. The time of day could also progress as you play to pay homage to the different times of day for each difficulty level in Wii Sports Resort. Archery, cycling, and island flyover were also incredible in that game, but I feel if they return, they wouldn't be nearly as good, since they relied a lot on Woohoo Island's sense of place, something Spoko Square is really missing. Though don't worry, we'll be fixing that in a bit. And now the fun part, let's talk about some brand new sports. And for the first one, I'll give the classic answer of American football. It'll probably never happen in any Wii Sports game since it's not an extremely popular sport globally, but once again, this is all just speculation. I think if they did something similar to what they did with soccer and almost made the gameplay a bit more arcade-like, this could fit right in and be really fun. I'd especially love if there was a charge-up mechanic for tackling players, kind of like the charge and chucks in Mario Odyssey. I feel like that would just be super satisfying and translate really well. A more unique idea could be some form of snowboarding or skiing, similar in gameplay to the skiing minigames in Wii Fit, except for the obvious change of using a controller instead of the balance board. These could also use the endless mode I mentioned for wakeboarding, with maybe the terrain getting rougher with more obstacles and the slope getting steeper as time goes by. In the same vein as winter sports, there's also hockey, but I feel that would be too similar in gameplay to soccer for it to be its own sport. I could maybe see it happening with more of a top-down perspective, but I think that would just end up being less fun. Water polo could be an interesting idea as well, though I feel like it would be pretty hard to implement in a video game without it being overly complicated. My best idea for it is to axe most of the players, kind of like what they did with basketball, and have it be mainly a 3-on-3, although there will also be a goalie on each team in addition to that. Passing and stealing would work just like in basketball, but you can freely move around the pool with the left stick instead of the weird motion control movement that was in Resorts basketball, which for some reason I could never get the hang of. Whenever the ball is shot, there would be a quick time event to let the shooter aim to determine the strength of their shot, kind of like how the Mario Strikers games work, and then the defensive team would have the chance to block, first with a field player if the ball is shot right in front of them, and then with a goalie, each by flicking the Joy-Con upwards, again kind of like how you block a shot in basketball. The timing for doing both would probably be fairly difficult though, so it may be better to have the option to have the field player be a CPU that automatically has a small chance of blocking the shot, and then the actual player only has to worry about controlling the goalie in order to prevent a goal. I definitely think this could end up working, but it's probably the least likely of the sports I've mentioned so far. Now remember how I mentioned Spoko Square doesn't have any real sense of place, especially compared to Woohoo Island? Well, it's time we fix that. I think one major way to give the game setting and identity would be by allowing the player to freely roam the entire square with your Mii or sportsmate. This would probably be a lot of work to implement, and Nintendo would likely never do this, but I really would love to speculate about it anyway. You'd manually travel to each sports building and be able to stop at stores where you could pick up the accessories for your character that already exist in the game. This could also open the door to finding secret areas and Easter eggs throughout the map. Imagine if there were even cosmetics you could only find by exploring the nooks and crannies of Spoko Square. That would seriously be such a cool feature. Imagine if this even had a type of Miiverse like the Splatoon games do in their main areas, where NPCs in the square would have messages from real players. Also like Splatoon, if you don't care to walk around the whole area just to play the sport that you want, you could also just press a button like Y to zoom out and access the menu that's present in the game right now. That way you kind of get the best of both worlds. This idea in particular I've had for such a long time. If you go back to the third video on my channel, I actually end up mentioning it. I really think this could add so much to the game, and I hope more than anything else I mentioned in this video that this ends up being implemented in either this game through an update or in a future game in the series. And what the heck, let's throw in one more pie in the sky idea. This is never happening, but I want Spoko Square to get lore. I know it's crazy, it is never happening, but I want to talk about it anyway because Woohoo Island had lore. If you play the Island Flyover game, you were able to get tiny little tidbits of information of all different parts of the island, and I just want something like that for Spoko Square. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, it could connect to the previous Wii Sports game, so I may be saying, oh, the sportsmates visit Woohoo Island for vacation, or the complex was built by Matt with his boxing winnings, or it could be completely disjointed. Maybe Spoko Square was built on the water as a man-made island to house only the most state-of-the-art sports facilities. I don't know. I just want some semblance of a story for this place, so it feels less like a menu and more like a real place. Even with all this, I doubt Woohoo Island could ever be topped by Spoko Square, and I still hope the former returns in the next entry in the series, but I really do still think Nintendo's capable of vastly improving the latter if they actually care to and put in the effort for it. Whether or not they actually will though, well, that still remains to be seen. Realistically speaking, none of these changes are probably going to be implemented. I mean, it was actually data mined a long time ago that there were files for basketball already in Switch Sports, so it's likely Nintendo actually had this sport done for a while and they just decided now was an okay time to release it. Even still, Switch Sports did sell a surprisingly high number of copies, so I doubt the series is dead. So I definitely think a lot of these changes could be implemented in the next entry in the series. But at the end of the day, these are all just my ideas, so what do you all think? Do you have an idea for what could be added to a Switch Sports update or sequel, or do you just think I'm crazy for deciding water polo could be implemented into a Wii Sports game? Make sure to let me know down in the comments below, and if you want to see more random speculation like this, I'll probably be doing a lot more, so make sure to subscribe so you get notified whenever I upload those videos. But with all that out of the way, thank you all so much for watching. I'm Jacob with the Game Block, signing off. See ya!